Hi, everyone, and here we are once again with another episode of Unstoppable Mindset. And I'd like to welcome you all to another episode from wherever you may be. And we have a guest who was on once before, Kim Lengling, and Kim is here to continue our discussions. One of the things that I ask people to do when they're going to come on this podcast is to send me questions they want to talk about. And so when we decided that Kim was going to come on again, I asked her to send me more questions. So I don't know how much agony she had to go through to figure that out, but I'll bet she figured it out pretty well since she's a published author with a lot of books to her credit. So we'll talk about some of those as well. So again, Kim, welcome to Unstoppable Mindset. We're glad you're here again.
Well, thanks for having me back. I've been looking forward to this.
I think it was episode 3 we were in originally. So anyway, we're glad you're here. And I think it will be a lot of fun to kind of talk about things again. You're in Pennsylvania, which is kind of cool. You share a love of nature and animals, and I guess you write about those things in general, what you write about and how you got started in doing that.
Yeah, I got started writing. I never thought to be a writer. That wasn't a dream of mine or anything that was even on the back burner. I was approached years ago by a woman that I had met in a business networking group, and she was putting together an anthology and asked me if I would like to contribute a chapter. And the name of the book was called Inspire, and it's about inspiring stories about people that have overcome something, whether it's trauma or what have you. And I had never shared my story before. I declined. I politely declined at first. And then she, kind of kept at me. She was persistent, but in a gentle, loving way. She said, Kim, you shared your story with me, and I really think it's something that should be shared. And so I eventually did share that. And that was an eye-opener for me on actually writing something that's so personal and had such an impact. And from that point forward, I kind of by the writing bug. I'm thinking, you know what? I had such positive feedback from the story as well. And I thought, okay, maybe this is something I should look into a little bit more. I was working full time and all of that. So I was just writing, in my off time or late in the evenings when I couldn't sleep or something like that. But that's kind of how it started.
What were you working on originally before you started writing? What were you doing?
I was sales and marketing manager. Background in the corporate world. Yeah. Did that for close to 25 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
Then you decided to go off and spin and do other things.
Well, the world changed. It was 2020.
Oh, the world did change, yeah.
Yes, the world changed, and I lost my job along with millions and millions of others because so many doors were closing, and many of them closed for good when that time. And at the season I'm at in life, in other words, the age, I decided I don't want to go back in the corporate world. I'm not happy there anymore. I don't feel fulfilled in any way. And all of the doors are shut right now. Everyone's stuck at home. We can't do anything. I'm going to try and make something happen and, figure out what it is I can do. So I asked myself 3 questions. What are you good at? What do you like doing? And what are you having a passion for? And I thought, well, okay, writing. I'm getting much better at it from when I started years ago. And I love meeting and talking to new people and learning new things. So I took that and created a podcast and started writing books.
There you go. It's interesting when September 11th occurred, the main mantra I heard from so many people was at the time, we got to get back to normal. And my reaction was always kind of negative, and it took me a while to realize why I was never happy hearing that. And the reason I wasn't, rightfully so, by the way, was normal would never be the same again. And so many people kept saying, we got to get back to normal, but normal would never be the same again.
Right.
And the other thing that hopefully people are a little bit more now discovering is that normal is a moving target anyway. I mean, look at the pandemic, and getting back to normal is not going to be productive from that either. The pandemic happened. Some companies want you to just come back to work full time, which flies in the face of the whole concept that maybe there is relevance in letting people at least partially work at home because they're happier, and they will be just as productive, if not more so, if you really go back to the whole concept of having happy employees. But, we're still not there yet.
No, I agree. Yes. Yes. And prior to, I was really unhappy where I was at. And it felt like, and I am sure that there are many, many people out there that feel the same or have felt the same, that you're on this hamster wheel. Mm-hmm. And it just seems you're more and more is expected. Now, I'm a hard worker, always have been. So I would never.
That's not the issue, right?
Yeah, that's not the issue. But it's, quality of life. Am I living to work or I'm working to live?
Mm-hmm.
And it gets to the point where for me personally, that's why I said, I don't want to go back in the corporate world. I was so unhappy. And it was actually becoming the atmosphere I was in was making me unhealthy. And that's not good long term either. And I'm thinking, I want to be able to enjoy retirement if I ever get there, Lord willing. I want retirement in a healthy manner, not be sick. And so it was a big decision and it was kind of scary. That's why I named my podcast, Let Fear Bounce. There was some fear in there, but I thought, if not now, when? When are we going to be feeling okay, Kim? I think that's a question we all have to ask. Now, I know everybody's circumstance is so different. I know that. And please don't think, anyone listening that I'm making light of any situation that someone's in. But for me, I had reached that point where it's like, I'm just going to do it. I'm just going to do it, period. And it was bumpy. It was very bumpy. And actually, I will be very honest, it was very hard the first 2 years.
I'll bet.
There were times I'm like, am I going to be able to make the mortgage?
Well, yeah. And at the same time, you made a decision that I'm sure helped your health a lot. And the more you came to grips with all of it, probably the better things became for you.
Yes, you're absolutely right. And once I had to let those fears bounce, like you said, I made that decision and I was getting healthier and I was feeling much better mentally as well as physically. And that's huge.
Yeah.
Life is not meant to be a grind.
Well, it's not supposed to be. You're right. How do we get to recognize that and deal with it? And I hope that the pandemic would help, and it has in some quarters, but in some quarters it certainly has not. How do we get people to recognize that there's a lot to be said for giving people more freedom on the job, letting people spend some time working from home, and the reality is they'll probably be more productive. I spoke with someone a few months ago on the podcast about he was in Europe, the work week, and what he said that there's a big difference between 5 8-hour days and 4 10-hour days, or 4 8-hour days, depending on what different companies did. But 4 10-hour days, you had an extra day that you didn't have to work and that you worked at home. And surveys have shown that productivity-wise, people do at least as well with the 4 10-hour days or a 4-day work week than they do with a 5-day work week.
My ex-husband was from Germany, and in Germany anyway, and I think a lot of Europe, they have much more time off than Americans do.
Mm-hmm.
So, when he moved here, he was like 2 weeks off a year. What do you mean 2 weeks? That is nothing. Because they get 6.
Yeah.
And they have much more sick time and much more personal time they're able to take. And a lot of the companies, at least over there, from what I know from him, the larger companies, they recognize that a happy, healthy employee is going to be a loyal employee.
Yep.
and, working your folks into the ground, they're going to burn out and leave you sooner. And I don't know, Michael, you have to tell me what you think or what you've run into when you talk to folks. Do some larger companies, and I don't know because I'm not in the corporate world anymore, but do some larger companies in larger cities, because I'm in a rural area, they have employees, but then, it's just works. So much overtime, they burn out, and then they hire younger and younger people for less and less money until they in turn burn out. It seems like it's an endless cycle from what I've heard from a few folks that I've talked to. Have you heard that as well?
Oh, I've heard that. And in fact, I spoke with someone yesterday, and we were talking about the whole concept of how investors and CEOs and so on work to a degree. And one of the bottom lines is the only thing that we have to do as a company is make our investors happy and make a profit for them. And that's just not true. And I don't know what it's going to take for people to learn there really is more to life, and there is so much more to be gained by having employees who are a lot more comfortable and a lot more happy. So I don't know. It is a very frustrating thing. And the reality is that if you have happy employees, then when there's a need, they will step up and do more than you will probably have ever thought they would do.
Agreed. Yes, I agree. Yeah, my daughter works for a company that she works from home 1 day a week, but they're also very flexible. So if something's wrong or like her daughter's sick or something like that, they will let her work from home on days like that, as long as she has her time in, and often go above and beyond, like because she's given that.
And that's fair.
Yeah, and I think it makes a huge difference in the work environment, and then also, your mental view of your job. It doesn't feel like it's a grind. My daughter, she loves her job, loves it. For me, it would be incredibly high stress, but the way they've set it up where she works, yes, she has stressful days, but it's not sustained stress every single day,
What does she do?
She does the finance and the HR for the parent company that oversees like 4 to 5 different companies.
So there can be stress. There can be.
Yeah. Yeah. But, she's, I often tease her. I'm like, oh, finance. As soon as you say numbers, just my brain turns off.
Yeah.
But, so it's such a different thing, a different atmosphere from like work experiences that I've had. So, and her bosses are younger. So it's like, I'm hoping that maybe it's a different generation that's going to take to have that become the norm, and you had said normal, people said we have to get back to normal. I don't, what is normal? Is normal. It's just what you're used to, not normal,
Right. Well, that's the point. And and what is normal for me is not necessarily normal for you. But the bottom line is that when something like September 11th happens or the pandemic happens, the fact of the matter is conditions will never go right back to the way they were before, and shouldn't, because in theory, at least, hopefully we learn from what happened. So with the pandemic, there was so much that all of us had the opportunity to learn about how to interact with each other, how to work with companies, and for those who did it, allow people to work at home part of the time. And I can understand and value going into an office to work, but you shouldn't have to do that 5 days a week and just have that be a grind. That's not what a job should really be about.
I agree. Now if we could just get many, many, many more people to agree with us.
There are probably a lot of workers who agree, but
yes.
You're right. Yeah.
Yes. I don't know. Have you ever listened to the group Alabama? I just love them. They're one of my favorite groups. And the other day I was driving along, running errands, and the Alabama song 40-Hour Week came on. It's about, Pittsburgh steel mill worker. They list, that truck driver. They list all of the different workers that keep America moving.
Mm-hmm.
And I just love that song. And I was listening to that song. And I thought of you actually, thinking of this upcoming conversation. But I love that song. I think folks go listen to that Alabama song, 40 Hour Week. It's a really good song. And if you're from the United States, it just kind of really slams home like what it should be and what we should be thankful for.
I think that it's absolutely appropriate for companies to want you somehow to put in a certain amount of time, and that they have goals that need to be achieved, but you want to have some flexibility in exactly how you deal with it, so long as you get the work done. And if you're really comfortable in doing it, probably more than they ever thought possible.
Right. Yeah.
That's what
And see,
teamwork
if
is
you're
really all
hired for a
about.
40-hour week job and then they say they expect 65 to 70 from you,
Yeah.
I've been in those jobs. That's tough.
The other side of it is the person who gets hired for a 40-hour a week job, but they're given more flexibility, they're given more freedom, and they put in 60, shocks the heck out of some bosses. Well, you're putting all this time in, but the job is wonderful. I love it.
Right. Yes. Yeah.
So it's an interesting discussion to have here, but it is also something that we're all going to be dealing with. And I think you're right. It's going to take younger generations to come in and hopefully have learned from the pandemic. And we'll see, because now we have students who experienced it in high school and they're going into college. And I'm sure that they're in part going to demand, and probably in a college environment, they get the ability to be a little bit more flexible in how they learn, because there's more lectures online, there are more things online, so they don't necessarily sit all the time in a classroom. But I think that there's also value in being in an office or being in a classroom at least part of the time.
Oh, I agree. I agree. Yeah, and I wouldn't ever expect to not be in an office. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, if that's where if it was a local company to me or something like that. There's a lot of
Yeah.
online jobs that are full-time remote, but because I think for me anyway, I did enjoy part of the office atmosphere because you're meeting people. And my job, I was meeting new people almost every day in
Yeah.
sales and marketing.
Yeah.
So that part, that I really enjoyed. And
Yeah.
being out on the road and going to different companies and speaking to other companies and things like that. So that part I enjoyed. So, that part I would never want to not do should I ever be in. But yeah, I know it's interesting.
Well,
Interesting.
I know that when I started in sales and so on, it was mostly all by phone, and I was selling high tech, very sophisticated, innovative products. But then it got to the point where we were selling a lot to Wall Street, and Wall Street insists that manufacturers actually have a presence in the city. I'm not sure if it's as much that way anymore, but probably it is, because Wall Street people tend to get what they want. But the bottom line is that then I moved to the East Coast, and so then I started doing a lot more traveling to visit customers, and I see the value of that as well. It was easy for me on the phone because, well, anyway.
Right. Right.
So, but by the same token, meeting with some of those people was a lot of fun, and I enjoyed doing it when we actually had a chance to start meeting. So there's value in that too.
Yeah,
Well,
I agree.
so one of the things that you describe yourself as is a lover of all things nature and animals and coffee. How did all that come together in your life?
Because
Personally, I do tea more than coffee, but that's okay.
I'll forgive you for being a tea drinker.
We could all go out and get some spam. Anyway.
That's nature, coffee,
And
animals.
Yeah.
Those are my that's kind of like my happy place. That's where I breathe. That's where I am most at ease. Outside, walking my dog, first thing in the morning, that first cup of coffee, they're heralding a new day and they're welcoming you to it. And as I sip my coffee and my dog's sniffing around the backyard the night before, you know, that's just, that's my happy place right there. So a lot of my thoughts and ideas come on my walks. And, you know, yesterday, nature is just amazing for me and it's just magical. And there was this really large cocoon hanging from two small branches. Out into the field with my dog, I would pass it every day. It's like right at my eye level. So I would always, tilt my head so I didn't hit it. And I was often wondering, what is in that? What is going to come out? Yesterday, I was going to take my dog for a walk in the evening because it's been so amazingly hot here. You have to wait until almost 7:30 at night to do anything. I'm walking by and there's the most beautiful moth, like the size of my hand, hanging. I've been watching this for weeks. And now look at the magic of nature. It's the most beautiful thing. And I just stood there. I took pictures of it and I just stood there in awe and wonder over it. And I thought, as I was walking away, and I kept looking back because it had just come out. It was just starting to flutter its wings. And I had never seen anything like that so soon after something, and it was so big, it's the size of my hand. And my thought was, okay, wow, look at the magic of nature right there. And these things that I notice, and I often wonder how much people miss because they're so busy all the time.
Right.
And to me, that was just such a big reminder of there is a lot of beauty in the world. There truly is. It might not seem like it, but there's a lot. There is a lot. And that was a big reminder to me yesterday. And that's part of why dogs, animals, and coffee.
So what kind of dog is Dexter?
Dexter, I got him from a local humane society. So he's a rescue. He is a Belgian Malinois Mastiff mix with just a smidge of Husky.
Wow.
Yeah. Very unique looking dog. He has a fawn body and one blue eye and one brown eye.
We had a cat and her name was Callie. Actually, it was Callie Alico, but Callie for short. And she had, we are of the opinion that she was two cats that were glued together because one side was white and the other side or what, but literally the line went right down her back and she's a wonderful kitty.
I love the unique ones.
Well, and then we had her sister also, who was named Smudge because Smudge was the runt of the litter and a little gray smudge.
Awesome.
But now you're talking about nature. We moved to New Jersey in 1996, and my wife Karen, one day I came home in, it had to be, I guess, the end of March, the beginning of April, and she said, I finally really understand what spring is about. I never thought about it much in California, but she said, this morning I looked out and all the blossoms were on the trees, and when I looked out this afternoon, they had all opened to flowers. They sprung.
Yes.
Which I thought was very interesting, and I've always remembered that.
Yeah, what a cool way to, yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, she was right.
She was.
That's right.
She was.
Yeah, and that's what I might complain more and more the older I get about winters of where I'm at because we experience all four seasons where I live in Pennsylvania. But there is so much beauty in each season.
Yeah.
And for me, it's just such a joy to experience all of them. It might be super cold in the winter, but there's beauty in that really still cold silence and the snow sparkling as the sun hits it. It's just, to me, that's, it's almost spiritual. Those moments that you can grasp onto. And for me, I grasp onto them, and then I pull them out later on days that I need them. They're my little nuggets of hope that are put before me that I might have to pull out every once in a while if I'm having a tough day.
I tend to disagree with most people, who say things like, well, out in California, you don't. It isn't necessarily as dramatic, perhaps, but in the winter, it is very cold, and there's, of course, a lot of snow. And the flowers do come out in the spring. They don't spring like they do in the East, perhaps, and it's a lot more gradual. But I really think there are 4 seasons, at least from my experience, there are. Maybe from a visual standpoint, it isn't there so much. But I think there are 4 seasons.
I think that's what I mean when I say that, the 4 seasons.
No, I know.
Yeah, because they're so definitive.
They are definitive. They're much more definitive, and I buy that. Now, in a place like Hawaii, perhaps, where there isn't snow and it doesn't get as cold in the winter, but even so, seasons are definable, and so what winter is still different than what spring and summer and autumn are, or fall is, and it's just a matter of how you perceive it. But that's the way it goes. Everybody's got a little bit different observations.
Well, it's what you're used to and where you live.
Yeah.
Because I've never lived in California, so I've not experienced those seasons. So, yeah,
I think it's a fun place to live. I enjoy it not being as cold. Although in the winter, out here we can get down to 10 degrees or colder. We don't get snow. I'm in a valley, so we don't tend to get. So as I love to tell people, they hog the snow with the share their cold air with us. So
yeah, 10 degrees is cold. That's chilly.
It's nippy. Yeah, it does get pretty cold, but that's okay. I have a house that is well insulated, so it stays pretty warm in the winter, and it's easy to keep it hot. And in the summer, it is pretty cool. It stays pretty cool in the house. It'll get up, if I don't turn the air conditioning on at all, it'll get up to 76 or 77 degrees by the evening time. So it's starting to feel a little warm, but it's okay. I'll still take the warmer air all year round than we typically find in the East, and I don't mind the lack of snow, not because of the snow, but because when it starts to melt and then the nighttime comes, it turns to ice. It's a frustration.
That's pretty scary sometimes, especially here, black ice.
Yeah.
In the wintertime. And the traveling in winter, I'm kind of thankful that I no longer have to go back and forth to work each day, because, you have those winter days where it's still dark in the morning. It's dark when you leave for work. It's dark when you come home, and snow and, shovel. I mean, it's a lot. It's a lot.
So, the thing is that I think we all live in different environments and so on. But I also know that if I have to live somewhere else, I can do it. I prefer to stay where I am. I'm fine where I am. And so I will do that as much as possible. But I also understand that sometimes things change and you deal with it.
That's right. Well, I like how you just said, you could live you like knowing that if you had to live a different place that you could do it.
Yeah, that's the big issue.
Yeah.
Well, for you, You've said that you've had experiences dealing with PTSD. How has that shaped your mission to offer, and I know this goes back to a book title, Nuggets of Hope, but for people and the other things that you're able to share because of your PTSD experience?
I've found over the years that, and all the folks that I've met that have been through some sort of trauma that has left them with, post-traumatic stress, that for myself, and I've witnessed it in others, makes you much more empathetic and compassionate to people.
Yeah.
And for me, it seems as the older I get, the more empathy I have. And because I can relate to, or I recognize symptoms or things that they're going through, I can relate to. Mm-hmm. And maybe I can offer a little nugget of hope. and say, hey, I've been there too. I've been in those same shoes, and oh my gosh, it is so hard. And oh, you're right. You're right. Sometimes it's even hard to breathe. Yep, you're right. Sometimes it stops you in your tracks. Yes, you're right. Sometimes you have 3 days of no sleep. But and my counselor told me a few years ago, said, Kim, and I was having a bad day. I mean, it was the day, and it was hard to breathe that day. And she said, Kim, when's the last time you looked in the mirror, like truly looked at yourself in the mirror? And I said, I don't do that. And I said, because I don't want to see the mess that I am. And she said, why go negative? Why do you look at yourself as a mess when you should be looking in that mirror and saying, wow, Kim, look at you. You have a 100% success rate. As a mess, you look at yourself as a success because you're still standing. You're able to look in the mirror and tell yourself that. And however that is for someone, maybe it's not looking in a mirror. Maybe, I don't know what that would be for someone. Whatever it is, remind yourself you're still standing. You're still here. Yep. It's a success rate for getting through the tough stuff. And when she said that flicked a switch in my mind. And I've not forgotten it. And I've shared it with so many other people that have been in tough spots. And then they have told me later, I shared that with someone when they were having a tough day. So I was like, look at all these little nuggets of hope that we can toss out to people. And you might be a nugget of hope and not even realize it. Like your show, Your show, Michael, could be nuggets of hope way in the future. So, right. I mean, how amazing to think of it that way, that we can, in our own way, just as that one person, someone says, well, you're just one person. You can't change the world. No, you're right. I can't. But I can change one person's world. Mm-hmm. I can be a positive nugget of hope in my own small slice of the world. And if we can do that, why wouldn't we?
The world, which is what you just said.
Yeah.
And the reality is, you shouldn't do it to change the world. You should do it to do what's right for you. But that is what I think ultimately most people will sense when you're doing something, especially when you're doing it for the right reason. You're not doing it just to try to get visible or publicity or whatever. And so I think when people see that, they empathize with it. And so you're right. Now, you never know when you're a nugget of hope.
That's right. Let's just keep on making ripples, huh?
Well, it's similar, and I about it on the podcast a few times. I used to always say it was something, and I was thinking about me internally. I'm going to deal with this because I'm my own worst critic. And only in the last couple of years have I realized, wrong thing to say, I'm my own best teacher, which is a much more positive and relevant thing. And if you use that every time, you might have used I'm my own worst critic, but you rather say I'm my own best teacher. Look at the difference and the positive impact that mentally immediately has on you, much less however else you deal with it.
Oh, that is awesome, Michael. You should make that into a coffee cup.
Or a teacup, but I'll have to work on that.
Or a teacup, that's right. Oh, I love that, though. See, it's just shifting a couple words and how that can change your mindset and how you look at it.
Exactly.
Amazing. I love that. Thanks for sharing.
Well, you're welcome. And you can use it. It's fair.
I think I will.
Perfect. Go ahead.
Yeah, that was an awesome nugget. So you're tossing it to me and I'm going to toss it elsewhere. Yeah.
There you go.
See, we can, and you're in California and I'm in Pennsylvania. We have literally just crisscrossed across the entire country with a nugget of hope.
We've blanketed the country.
That's right, with hope.
So you've written a number of anthologies, and I guess the latest one is Paw Prints on the Kitchen Floor, which is the creative title. But what do you learn, and what do animals help you learn, and grow from that?
Gosh, it's so fun. It was so fun putting that book together. Authors in there, each with a chapter. Sharing for me, and oh my gosh, some of the stories just bring you to tears. They make you laugh out loud. It was just, but for me, the dogs in my life that I've had in my life, they have patience, empathy. They've also taught me to slow down at times. Because I've caught myself rushing my dog. I'm like, come on, Dexter, come on. You've been sniffing that one blade of grass for like 2.5 minutes. Let's go. And then I realized, and then he doesn't listen to me. He keeps on sniffing. And I'm like, you know what? Why am I rushing him? Maybe I should just sit down and, take in a couple deep breaths, So they've taught me to slow down and to enjoy the little things more, to see the world. It's like sometimes feels like, yeah, just get down on the ground and see the world from their point of view.
Yeah.
And I don't know. We can learn an awful lot from animals, as I'm sure you are aware.
Well, last August we published Live Like a Guide Dog, true story from a blind man and his dogs about being brave, overcoming adversity, and moving forward in faith. And the whole idea was to try to start to teach people how they can learn to control fear and not let it overwhelm, or as I put it, blind them. And the reality is there's so much of that we can learn from dogs and other animals, but and really studying fear, so many lessons. Like, why do people fear so much? Well, because all we do is spend all day going, well, what if this happens? Or we're worried about every single thing that comes along, and we don't have control over over 90% of the things that come along. But yet we try to, and we become afraid because of that. And rather than stepping back and going, wait a minute, I don't have any influence over that. Okay, I'll be aware of it, but there's nothing I can do about it, so I'm not going to worry about it. For example, using probably the most visible one today is our elected leaders. We've got people who are on both sides of supporting or not supporting the president and so on. But the reality is, it's going to do, and I'm not going to say what's good and not good about that, but the president's going to do what the president's going to do. What good does it do us to worry about all that all day, every day? Now, I want to be aware of it, so I do watch the news, but I want awareness, not being around to just go ape over everything that happens. And I learned that from working with and being involved with dogs. Dogs don't worry about that. They live in the moment. They worry about what they have to deal with, and that's all they have to worry about. So they tend not to fear. They tend not to do, well, they don't do what if, and their lives are much better and more peaceful, and we could learn so much from that if we would but do it.
Yes, that's right. And you mentioned you used the word control at one point, because we don't have control over so much, even though we like to think we do.
Yeah, and we don't.
Yeah, we don't at all. And once you realize that and actually accept that, I think for me anyway, it was easier to let fears go, because it's like, I don't have control over really anything. Is going to happen. I mean, yeah, some things, but not the big things. Or like you said, to go ape over certain things, we have no control over so much. And, there's no reason to argue, fight, rip each other apart over things that literally you personally have no control over.
The other part about that, though, is while not having control, if we would but talk about things and listen to other people and listen to their viewpoints, you never know what you might learn. It doesn't necessarily mean you're going to change your position, but you never know what you're going to learn.
That is right. And we don't have to agree.
No.
It's okay to disagree and still like Jeez.
And there's nothing wrong with that.
Nope.
But we live in such a society today, everyone wants to control everything, and if you don't do it just the way I do it, you're wrong. And that's just not true.
Yeah. And that's not the way it's supposed to be.
Mm-mm.
You know, that's not how we're supposed to be living. We're not supposed to be living in anger and fear and arguments and, darkness. It's just not the way it's supposed to be, folks. I don't know. So I work very hard to not live in an atmosphere or let myself be sucked into an atmosphere like that.
Yeah. I will avoid those kinds of situations simply because there's no need to really discuss and learn. If people want to talk, I love to talk and I love to learn. And if people disagree with me, my job is not to get angry about it, but I might say, why do you have that position? Tell me more. Now, I've had some people where I know that their political views are opposite of mine. And if I ask them, why do you believe this, for example, they won't even talk about it because they just say, I'm right. And if you're asking, then you clearly don't have the same opinion I do, and we're not going to talk about it.
Yeah. You're clear of those types of conversations as well. When you know going in, it'll go nowhere but negative.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's why, I take a lot of walks with my dog.
Sometimes you can have those conversations, and that is so wonderful because you never know what you might learn.
Exactly.
And it doesn't necessarily mean you're going to change your opinion, but you get insights that you wouldn't get any other way. Communication is so important.
Yes, it is. Respectful communication.
Well, your latest book, Nuggets of Hope, that's a creative title and so on. And I think that's really kind of cool. Can you tell us a story that particularly moved you that came out of that book?
Yeah.
Authors and telling stories.
Yeah, that's right. And I'm trying to remember if I shared this one on the last time I was with you or not, but I'll share a different one. Years ago, I'm a veteran and I support veterans that struggle, and through my veteran post, support our troops. We send monthly boxes to those that are deployed around the globe, and we also help veterans in need in our local area as we're able to. And many of those have been, through traumatic experiences or they live with PTSD. There was one young man years ago who reached me and said, "Hey, I need help." And I said, "Okay, what can we help you with?" And he gave me a little bit of his situation. And I said, "All right, this is going to take me a minute or two to get some things rounded up. But yes, I think we can help you and I want to help you." And then he called me back and said, "You know what? No, forget about it. Forget I called you. I don't need help. I'm fine." And I said, I don't agree with you. I think you're fibbing. And it took a while, but I'm a single person. So I took a male friend with me when I went to meet him at his home. Mm-hmm. And his home was more of a hovel than anything. And it was a hovel. It was really unlivable. And I said, where are you sleeping? And he pointed at a spot on the floor. And he was a Marine. I said, well, Marine, you're not going to sleep on the floor. I've slept in much worse places. I said, I am sure you have, but you're not going to sleep on the floor on my watch. We will get you a bed. What else do you need? And he wouldn't tell me. And I said, can you show me through your home? And he said, I prefer not to. And I said, I can't help you unless I know what you need. And he took me through his home, and each room was worse than the last. Falling apart, no water. It was pretty rough. And he was to hang on. And I reached out to people that I knew that I had met over the years of doing things that we do through our post. And to make a longer story shorter, it turns out a contractor saw and heard what I was trying to do, what we were trying to do for this young man. And he contacted me and he said, if this young Marine agrees to it, take me out there. Let me take a look at his home and we'll see what we can do. And he went in, took a look, and the young Marine was like, you know what? If you could just fix this living room floor, that would be great. That's all I need. Just if my living room floor, because it was about to fall in.
Mm-hmm.
He said, if you could just fix that. And the contractor literally came in, and this brings me to tears, came in room to room
Mm-hmm.
and redid his whole home. I mean, with a bathroom, bedroom, living room, kitchen. I was able to get him furniture. I was able to get him new appliances. I was able to get him a bed. We were able to get him a car because he only had a motorcycle, and winter was coming, and we had snow where I live.
Yes.
And, he's like, no, I'll be fine. I'm like, you cannot drive a motorcycle in the winter to work. You'll lose your job. And he had lost his job before because of that. So he was really, really in a tough spot. But people came together. Total strangers came together when I tossed out that call, and everyone came and brought in nuggets of hope. I mean, and for this young Marine who was struggling so terribly in many ways, he now had a livable home that was much nicer than he even could imagined. He had a used car that a car dealership. They had an older used car, but it was in great condition. And they said, hey, this will last him for a couple of years if he maintains it well. At least it'll get him by, you know. And then I had another person reach out and said, hey, my mom, 6 months of insurance for this young Marine's car in honor of my dad, who was a Marine. These nuggets of hope completely changed this young Marine's life completely around. I kept in touch with him for years after. And then I ran into him at a convenience store one day. I was getting gas, and he said, Miss Kim. And I said, oh my goodness, how are you? And he goes, I'm doing really, really well. You have no idea how good I'm doing. And I need to thank you because you were my angel coming to me when I needed it most. He goes, I got a full, bought a new house. I have a brand new car. And I just looked at him, I started crying because I met him at his lowest point.
Yeah.
But so many of us came together and tossed out a nugget of hope and just shared kindness and love and understanding.
Was this all because of something like PTSD in his case? Uh-huh.
Yes. Yeah. He was struggling mentally, physically, because mental plays a big part on your physical as well. You know, and he was going through a divorce. He lost custody of his son. He was probably going to lose his job. His house was falling apart. And then, you know, 5 or 6 years later, because I honestly almost didn't recognize him physically when I saw him. So, and I was thinking, oh my gosh, so that was years later. So just think of what lasting effects that they have. That's why I wrote this book. And it's just little stories, you know, little stories. That's such a huge story, but stories like that are shared in there, along with just, you know, practical things on just, you know, how to be kind. You can do it, you know. It doesn't cost a dime to be kind.
How did writing that book affect you, and how does it affect you? And I'll tell you why. Well, let me let you answer, and then I'll tell you why I asked.
I too live with PTSD, and when I help others, and when I am able to be a small spark of light or a nugget of hope to others, that in turn helps me. And because sometimes, for me anyway, I call it a weight. PTSD sometimes can be really heavy on some days. Help others or do something to help others. Some of that weight off. So it's a healing thing for me. And putting this book together and writing it, and thinking back over some of the things, you know, that happened as I was writing, there were tears involved. I laughed, and then at the end, I was just so very thankful. So very thankful that I was able to be in that spot and that God put me where I was supposed to be in all these different circumstances to it was healing and also empowering, and gave me, the inspiration to just keep on keeping on, keep on doing what I'm doing.
I asked because I kind of figured that would be your answer, but I asked because I know in my case, after September 11th, people said you need counseling and all that sort of stuff. But I started getting phone calls from reporters, and my wife and I decided calls, and people would come to our home, and that was therapy because I got asked virtually any question that you could imagine regarding September 11th and me and so on. Some very dumb questions, but some really incredibly excellent, intuitive, and concerning questions. Having to learn to answer all of those because I put myself in the position where I needed to answer the questions was probably the best thing that I could do. So
Yeah.
in your case, right, helpful and pretty cathartic for you as well.
Yeah. It is amazing that now, I guess I have a question for you.
Do you?
Yes, I do. Did you ever, I know that you said you and your wife decided, yes, you were going to take those phone calls, you were going to take those interviews. But prior to that, did you find yourself maybe trying to stuff some of that stuff down?
I never did. Story is that the next day I contacted Guide Dogs for the Blind, where I've gotten all of my dogs, and among other things, I spoke information at the time, and she wanted to write a story, and I wasn't really thinking very straight. Well, that's what I say, but it didn't really matter. I said, "Sure, go ahead," and she said, well, "What television show do you want to be on first?" So I sort of flippantly said, "Larry King Live." And on the 14th of September, we had the first of 5 interviews on Larry King Live.
Yeah, you were on Larry King Live.
So the first interview was actually from a major magazine the day before Larry King. I won't mention the name, and you'll see why in a moment. But the media had already gotten the story because Joanne wrote it and it went out. And somebody called and they said they wanted to talk with me. And then near the end, they said, "I want to come and take a picture of you wearing the suit that you wore on September 11th. And I said, "Why?" "Well, that's all dirty and all that." And I said, "No, we sent it to the cleaners already." Now, we hadn't sent it to the cleaners, although we did. But I just thought that was a pretty obnoxious thing to say. It was insensitive to say, "I want you in the suit that you wore. I want to show you as this dirty, scruffy guy," when that really wasn't the kind of image that I wanted to project because I was already
yeah.
I was already at a
Wow.
point where it's hope, it's positiveness, and that just doesn't make sense to do. So that was the first one.
That's really, wow. That just amazes me that someone asked you to do that.
Yeah.
Wow.
But had a lot of interviews and a lot of conversations with people ever since. And now it's kind of fun. Every so often, and I can't remember the last one, but every so often I'll get a question I've not heard before. But it doesn't happen very often anymore. But by the same token, I look for those questions because it shows that somebody's really thinking. I always hear, "Well, you didn't know what happened because you couldn't see it." And that is so fun to deal with because my response is always the same. The last time I checked, Superman and X-ray vision are fictitious, and the building was struck 18 floors above us on the other side. Nobody saw it where I was. But people want to rationalize. That's okay.
Yeah, that's okay.
So
well, that's what makes the world go round. You have everybody that looks at the world in a different viewpoint. So there you have it.
And sometimes we get to help people reshape it, or we work on it anyway.
That's right.
So faith is a big part of your life, isn't it?
It is. It is. I think that's something. It wasn't always a part of my life. I was probably my mid-30s that I came to have faith, and since then it has been a big part of my life. And on those tough days when the weight feels heavy, and I'm out there walking with my dog more than normal, that is what I turn to. I know, it doesn't That's my belief. Everybody has their own beliefs, but for me, if I've got God to talk to, and that makes a
Hmm.
huge difference in my life and helps to settle me on those days that my soul feels a little bit unsettled. Prayer, being outside, being with my dog, that's what settles me,
Yeah.
settles my soul, and I can just take a deep breath and keep on keeping on.
I was talking with someone yesterday on a podcast episode that will be coming out, and it'll be probably one or two before yours. But um, he had an interesting thing to say, which I absolutely buy and I believed for a long time, and that was we were talking about prayer, and he said the biggest problem with people in prayer is they're always telling God what they need, and they never listen to get the real answer, rather than recognizing God really knows what you want. And yeah, you might say it, but then the real question is, do you ever slow down and listen to your inner voice, which is God, that will tell you the answer to whatever it is that you're perplexed about? I thought that was very interesting for him to observe that, and I've believed that for a long time.
I've believed the same as well for a very long time. That's what I'm
Yeah,
always saying. People, you got to slow down. You
yeah,
just got to slow down and take a look, and listen. There's a reason that be still
yes, yeah.
to Christians. Be still. So, and sometimes it's hard. I know that we're human. None of us are perfect. We are going to stumble, especially if you're, in your faith or your Christian walk. We're going to stumble because we're human. We're normal. But try and get off that hamster wheel
Yeah.
and slow down, because you're missing out on a lot. You're missing out on so much, and you're going to get, Lord, later years, and you want to be able to look back fondly and smile, and not with, gosh, I wish I would have.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The reality is that you do miss so much by just running around on the hamster, slowing down, taking time to think about what happened today, and even the good stuff. Could I have made it better? Could I have done anything? But when you have the stuff that didn't go well, what am I afraid of? What kind of fear is this causing? And those are things that we talk about in Live Like a Guide Dog, because those are all part of what we need to learn to address and deal with in order to discover how better to control fear. And we can do that.
Yes. And be thankful, even for those,
Mm-hmm.
even for the crappy days.
Yeah.
Be
But
thankful for even for the crappy days, because you got another day
still take the time on the crappy days
to learn.
to learn. Exactly right.
Yes.
And most
Yes.
people won't do that, and that is unfortunate, because those are the best learning experiences. If you listen to hear what you're being told about how to make sure that,
Michael, see, we're still solving the world problems here.
yeah, we're
Golly,
blanketing the country with nuggets of
that
hope.
is right.
I don't want to bury everybody, so I'm going to thank you for being here. It's been a whole hour already.
Best way is just go through my website, which is kimlenglingauthor.com. You can see what I'm doing, the books that are out there, what's coming up. You can meet Dexter, because he is my office manager, and he receives all the emails and then lets me know what's happening and who I need to reach out to. So he keeps me on track and keeps me on my toes. But yeah, Kim Lengling. My book's
Lengling
on
is spelled.
Amazon.
Lengling is spelled.
Lengling.
There you go. Just like it sounds.
That's right.
Well, and reach out to Dexter. And one of these days, well, we were talking before we started the podcast. I'm going to be in Pennsylvania at the beginning of October, and I hope maybe we'll get to meet Dexter.
Wouldn't that be awesome?
We'll let Dexter meet Alamo. Yeah.
Yeah, why not? By golly.
Works for me. Well, thank all of you for listening. I hope you've enjoyed this. I hope you've gotten some things out of it. It's fun talking to Kim. We'll have to do it again. And I know that I was on Let Fear Bounce, and I'm going to go back on that again. So go off and check out her podcast, Let Fear Bounce, and listen to it. Lots to learn there. And we'll hopefully contribute a few nuggets well for all that you do to support us. Please give us a 5-star rating wherever you're listening. And please, if you would know anybody else who want to be a guest or who you think ought to be a guest, let us know, introduce us. We would appreciate it. And give us a 5-star rating wherever you're listening to us. So again, though, Kim, thank
Yes, it has. Thank you very much. It's been a true blessing, Michael. Thank you.